we're now moving to the plenary session. I would now like to invite for the plenary session of this afternoon program on leveraging technology to transform the student. Zanthi Avila from ReadyTech will be our moderator. I will quickly introduce her before I hand the stage over. Zanthi Avila has been working with tertiary education and training providers in the Asia-Pacific region since 2009. She is currently tertiary education lead at ReadyTech and firmly believes that the evolving sequence of the person's work experiences over time can be an important source of human satisfaction and fulfillment. Over to you, Zanthi. Hello, Zanthi. Yep.
Thank you very much for that introduction. So now I you to Matt Hughes. Matt? Hello, Matt. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Thank you for joining us tonight, Matt. I'm going to give you a very quick intro. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, it's fine, thanks.
All right. So Matt Hughes is Managing Director at Ripen Psychology, and he is a leading resilience coach. After navigating a successful career in corporate finance strategy and consulting across 3 continents, Matt retrained in psychology to learn the resilience skills and techniques used by elite performers. Resilience skills and techniques used by elite performers came in handy, and since 2016, he and his team at Ripen have designed and delivered proven resilience programs to organizations across Australia and internationally. So digital resilience training across 17 countries apparently is part of the program that Matt and his team are delivering. And during the pandemic specifically, the digital resilience training was actually used to leverage the power of technology with social learning for building workforce resilience at scale. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Zanthi. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so with many of our clients having workforces that are geographically dispersed, often remote and extremely time poor, in 2019 we developed our courses into a digital learning experience for bringing life-changing resilience skills training to individuals and teams at scale. And in 2020, throughout the height of the pandemic, we trained over 1,000 leaders and their teams from across 17 different countries and most major industries and economies, with an average rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars for our digital courses. And I'm here to share any relevant insights I can for educators to bring their life-changing training and education to people by also leveraging the power of technology. So thanks for having me.
All right, wonderful. Matt, I hope you don't mind, but I'm gonna start throwing questions at you, and we can start the discussion. So,
Please.
as you know, the theme of our panel discussion today is leveraging technology to transform the learner experience. Okay, I noted when we were doing our prep for this session that you don't call your students, you call them learners. I was going to ask you to expound on that, actually.
Yeah, sure. Students, for many people, certainly for us and the work we do, it can put people into a frame of mind that perhaps isn't workplace related. Students kind of talks to younger generations in school or perhaps in higher education, university. And we're really working with workplaces, with people who are in professional working capacities. And so students just didn't seem to fit as well for the work we do.
All right. Well, that segues to my next question. So I wanted to ask you to speak about basically the learner transformation journey as you see it over at Ripen Psychology. Okay, and specifically couched in the parameters of leveraging technology during the pandemic.
Right. Yeah. So during the pandemic. Why digital learning during a pandemic? Well, really there's 3 reasons. The first is it's remote. Educators needed a way and still need a way to reach people working from their home office, from their dining room table or from their cupboard under the stairs. So digital learning is remote. It enables remote learning. The second big reason is it enables people to upskill or reskill quickly. People who were stood down or had their working hours cut had more time to do the course that they'd always wanted to have the time to do. While for others still in the workplace, they had to rapidly learn new skills, new software, new systems, new processes, just for navigating the new world of remote working. So digital learning enables that quick and rapid upskilling. But also, let's be frank, it was the only option and still is the only option. Digital learning was not and is not the preferred learning pathway for many people, both educators and learners. We've been culturally conditioned through schooling to learning primarily being as a face-to-face experience. The pandemic forced a change in this paradigm, with schools and universities forced to pivot to digital education. So, and obviously with mixed approaches and results on how this was done. However, most seasoned professionals in the corporate or in the corporate space or in the workforce will tell you from their experience that online learning is used for courses that are just a tick in the box. It's the mandatory banking compliance or the workplace health and safety training that they have to complete each year. You know, and they often have the online or e-learning course open on a second screen at their desk, and they do it half-heartedly while they're actually working. So that's really the why. It's remote. It enables people to upskill and reskill quickly, and it was the only option. That's the why for digital learning during the pandemic.
And that's a very valid point, actually, about digital learning. And I guess, you know, most people have a preconceived notion of what digital actually is. You know, it's a very bandied around term, right? Yeah. And you know, you may or may not agree with me, but it's become more of a tangible concept ever since the pandemic.
Definitely.
And what have you found in that regard? Because clearly, when you and your team got together, digital was part of the strategy even before the pandemic. You know, it's just that the pandemic lent a different context to it, I should say.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a great question, Zanthi. So even before 2020. With a global client base at Ripen consisting of clients with small to large workforces across most major industries and economies. In 2019, we built out our resilience training as a digital experience, and we made it better than face-to-face. And I'll explain how and why we did that. The three needs driving digital before the pandemic that we uncovered were, firstly, a lower cost base and better scalability. So face-to-face experiences are expensive to run, and they're very difficult to scale when you're upskilling geographically dispersed individuals and teams. So that was the first need: lower cost base, better scalability. The second was more flexible. People in the workforce, in professional corporate roles at any level, are incredibly time poor. So full day face-to-face or even half day face-to-face workshops, or even virtual, you know, intense training seminars are increasingly not feasible for many organisations or teams. So we needed a way for digital learning to be more flexible digitally. And the third big reason was digital learning, or the three needs driving digital in 2020, before 2020, sorry, were enabling social learning and practical application. So face-to-face workshops or face-to-face learning journeys enable social learning, i.e. people come together and they learn from other people. But they don't typically enable the application of tools or skills back on the job. People attend face-to-face or live virtual training seminars. They have a load of skills thrown at them in a condensed space of time. Then they leave the experience with all these new skills and behaviours to apply when they get back to their real world. It becomes so overwhelming. The face-to-face experience has ended, so they've got no support. And so they typically just go back to what they previously did. And ROI for any training spend is then negative. So why digital in 2021 and beyond? Well, done properly, our view from the work we do is that digital learning will be as good, if not better than face-to-face in the post-pandemic reality that we will face. And this is because digital learning enables a couple of things really significantly well. So first of all, as I said, remote and flexible learning pathways. Whatever the post-COVID world looks like, Zanthi, it's pretty clear that flexible working arrangements are going to be the new norm. And high caliber talent are already demanding flexible work arrangements, even ahead of remuneration benefits in negotiating job roles. So even if people work from home only 40% of the time, that's still 2 days per week going to be out of the office. So remote and flexible learning pathways is really critical, and digital learning enables that. The second big one is the benefits of social learning. Before the digital revolution of the last few years, social learning, i.e. bringing people together to learn together, was only possible face-to-face. But now digital learning, and everybody listening to this who's an expert in digital learning knows that digital learning now enables both live and asynchronous ways to educate people while still achieving the need for learning that is remote and flexible. Something that face-to-face training or learning outcomes can't do. Then the third big one is practical application of skills back on the job. And we talk about practical application of skills back on the job as part of the learning journey. So done properly, a digital learning pathway ensures the learning of skills and tools in bite-sized chunks, with each chunk requiring the application of skills and tools back in the workplace as they're learned, i.e. before moving on to the next skill or the next tool in the suite that's on offer. So they're the top three, but there's a fourth. So we've got remote and flexible learning pathways, the benefits of social learning, and practical application of skills back on the job as part of the learning journey. But all of this wraps up in digital learning offering us something face-to-face can't do, which is the measurement of learning for proving ROI. So proving ROI for learning and development is increasingly important in a post-pandemic world, given the cost constraints that many workplaces are facing. Organisations are also getting leaner and far more stringent as to what training should achieve in terms of measurable outcome. Depending on how good your learning platform is, we're very lucky that the learning platform that we use from our friends and partners over at Cohort Learning is incredible. We're able to track things like learner engagement during the learning process while the training's happening. We can track learner sentiment, track learner progress, and many other valuable proof points for showing just how well that learning is landing as training is happening, but also how well it's shifted capability. And these four things are incredibly well enabled through digital, not so much through face-to-face in what we see as a post-pandemic.
I'm really intrigued by that fourth point. You know, measurement of learning for proving ROI. So, okay, let me expand on that and give you more room to work with. Okay. So, jumping off from that fourth point, you know, how do you find working with companies when developing that platform for learning and the learning experience?
How do we find it, or how do we do it?
Well, both. How do you? Because there are you can talk about the differences in the companies themselves. You know, what you see are the patterns. You know, and then how you adapt to that. You know, with Ripen's offerings.
Yeah. Look, again, really important question. So, the methodology that we use for all our client engagements, we feel ensures we get the right start with learners in the best way for our clients and for their workforce overall. So, and I'm happy to share this. It's proprietary, but we talk about it on our website. The four-step process we have is assess, plan, educate, measure. So, and these are tailored for each client in terms of the steps, but as a general view, in our assess process, the very first step we do, before a client enrolls anyone in our courses, we seek to understand why we're doing this training, what are we trying to achieve? Or why are we doing this upskilling? What are we trying to achieve? And this includes us understanding the performance or well-being measures that they have used to identify a need for our resilience training. They've already tapped into the need. We're just there exploring what they've measured, how they've measured it, so that we can then use that as a point for then measuring and improving ROI at the end of our journey. So assess. Now, from the assessment, if you do that well, you're then in a better place to do our step 2, which is plan. And this is where we plan our deployment approach based on this assessment. So every client will have their own needs and challenges and ways of measuring what's important to them. So the plan naturally will then be customized to the client or to the workforce. And this is no one-size-fits-all approach.
Matt, I might just jump in if you don't mind. My name's David Linky. I'm the Managing Director of EduGrowth. I just want to offer my deep apologies to you as speakers and to the attendees and the delegates for the technical problem we've had. But I think, Phil, you're here now. You're on the main stage. So I just thought I wanted to just jump in there and let everyone know I apologise sincerely on behalf of EduGrowth Global Victoria and our platform partners for the challenge that you've faced. You've done an incredible job. I just wanted to let you know, Phil, you're here. Can we hear you?
Hopefully, yes.
Fantastic. We can hear you. We can see you. Zanthi, we can hear you and see you. And Matt, we can hear you and see you. So I might leave you guys to continue on the conversation. And I do make my apologies for the challenges that you've had. Thank you very much for your support.
Thanks for jumping in, David. So, hello, Matt. Apologies for the interruption.
No, not at all. It's nice to have another voice here. People will get sick of my dulcet tones, I'm sure.
Phil, we were having a really lovely time talking about the student learning experience, and we were moving into the corporate experience actually, and measuring proving ROI through actually introducing digital learning into the mix. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Phil. I am.
And my apologies too. I think there was a bit self-inflicted in terms of the connection as well. So I think EduGrowth, I thank David and the team for actually spending some time. I think there was Monique out there who did a fair bit to assist, and Mickey as well. So thanks very much. Yep.
All right, I'll do a quick intro for you, Phil, as well. All right, so before I fire off a question at you. All right, so this is Mr. Phil Murphy, and he has had a long career in the vocational education and training sector, particularly in Victoria, with roles spanning many years in VET and TAFE, from sessional to senior executive. So amongst his many achievements, he is most recognized for leading the creation and operation of the Automotive Center of Excellence at Bendigo Kangan Institute. And he was instrumental in gathering support from industry and government to develop the state-of-the-art automotive facility that that is now called the ACE. So he is currently leading the Student Journey Transformation Program at BKI. And this is a 3 to 4 year program of digitizing the staff and student experience through investing in students, people, systems, and processes. So Phil, that last leading sentence puts you in a really, really good spot to actually share a bit with us that student journey transformation and what you found in your experience at BKI.
Yeah, look, thanks, Zanthi. And I think there was also, and look, to be clear, we started this journey before the pandemic. So we were on a 3 to 4 year program, which is about really digitising the student journey as much as possible, and moving from a fairly manual face-to-face physical campus delivery, obviously, to different modes of delivery, in line with our strategy, which was about being national, being international, and doing things differently. And I suppose where we came with the pandemic, pandemic was a great, I think, accelerator for us. So it provided an opportunity for us to do things a bit quicker than we previously did. And just 2 weeks ago, we opened in India with our partners, Maruti Suzuki and the government of Gujarat, the Indian IACE, ACE Automotive Centre of Excellence. And India is a powerhouse for the automotive manufacturing world. So we're the education partner in that process. And so, you know, it was really important for us to start thinking about different ways of doing things because you know, culturally, the you know, the dollars that are available for an individual in India is a lot different than what we can do in Australia. So we had to work out different modes of doing things. So for us, it was a national and international sort of process that we need to go through. We've also got, and I think I did hear Matt talking about a number of business sort of corporates who, in our context, are national, and last year they were stopped from coming across borders, and so it was important for us that we had alternatives, and we did. We've done a lot of work on digital courseware, particularly in our automotive areas, and we'd started a new student management system program with our partners, ReadyTech, using the JR Plus program. So it was really important for us, I suppose, to move on this journey. You know, there was all those factors, the market factors, the regulation, compliance, and you know, it was interesting just the other day to see a 91-year-old person attend a vaccination centre and be turned away because they hadn't filled in the digital form work, and so they had to go back. So, you know, we can't escape it. We know that's the direction we've got to go. And if you want to be competitive too, you have to offer us, you know, you just can't deliver the same old thing that you've been delivering in the past. So, inevitably for us, it was important. We're a large organisation, so there's a lot of internal challenges in that as well. You know, our culture, existing capability, and our resource availability. But we put it on a 3 to 4 year footing, this part of it, and I'm sure it's just going to be an ongoing sort of journey that we're going to take. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of why we're doing digital and where we're going, you know, what we need to do in some sense.
All right. Well, I'm gonna revisit some of the what we've already discussed, what Matt and I have already discussed, but just describing it in a different lens yet again. Okay. Because on the one hand, you have the learners, okay, and their experience, you know, putting that top of mind. But on the other hand, if you do work with companies and industry, there's also that side of it. Okay.
Very much so.
So, you know, I'm curious to hear from you both. You know, how do you marry the two? How do you provide value to the different stakeholders in this digital learning equation?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose for us, in terms of working with businesses and corporates, many of them aren't really, you know, over the moon about a certificate or something. I mean, they want to. The outcomes that many that we deal with, their return on investment, they want operational improvements, operational excellence. They want to do things differently. They want to, you know, they've got some regulatory work to be done, some compliance work to done, but they really want to improve their business outcomes. So working with them, you know, and inevitably in many of those circumstances, the business is paying for that. So it's important that I suppose we first sit down with the individual business to discuss the motivations. What are we doing? Where are we going in terms of the business? And then understanding that, and then through their offices, then meeting with individual students to understand as well their motivations, but in line with where the business is going. And also in that, I suppose, that discovery phase is sort of trying to understand what the business wants to customise, in particular, what's really important in terms of incorporating their own policies, their own procedures, their own ways of doing things in the training. And usually that's fairly paramount in where they want to go. And in that, I suppose, early phase, we then come to some sort of agreement about if we do this program, what is the return on investment? And it's just not, it's not, you know, we've got 10 certificates. It's, you know, in some situations, you know, a really interesting one was a funeral company who had 10 premium caskets on the line. They wanted actually 15 premium caskets on the line, completed per month on the line. So it was understanding that sort of business outcome and what it meant for them, and incorporating that in the program, not necessarily the caskets and the dead bodies, but that thinking around operational excellence through the process. So I suppose that's where we first start, that alignment to business goals, business strategies, and business directions. And from then it starts to flow as to where we work through the business, where that might look. Of course, the training intervention isn't the only thing that makes the return on investment work. There are some other things. So we're a bit of a co-producer in many of those activities.
Matt, do you want to continue the thread?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that Phil said around the why for learners is often it's aligned, obviously, because their employers are often paying for it, but the why for them, it needs to be positioned differently to how we position the why for the client. You know, if I think back to 2019, the key for us back then when turning our resilience training to a digital experience was finding a platform and delivery approaches that would achieve measurable behaviour change outcomes for our learners. So they would actually leave our courses feeling that they had uplifted their resilience for their life and their career advancement, while being able to prove ROI for our clients, investing in their workforce wellbeing and performance. You know, so being able to cover both camps. And so for our clients, they really are excited about the power of the AI and the learner reporting that we're able to give them. You know, and I'm not talking about Big Brother watching learners on their webcam, but our platform enables things like sentiment. You know, we're able to track in real time how people are feeling about the experience, how they're going with activities, and this is the power of digital learning. We can measure real-time learner engagement. You know, how much time are they spending on activities? How much time are they engaging in conversations and discussion threads that are built into our courses? And then ultimately reporting on capability uplift based on the completion of tasks and activities, more than just a feedback form at the end of the training experience. So that's what our clients really care about, is actually having that proof of ROI around where is well-being, where is performance, where is capability uplifted. But for learners, it's more around, you know, and the framework we use is what, why, how, outcome. So what does the learning experience involve? What's required of them when? But the what's not exciting. For them, what they care about is the WIFM, the WIIFM, and everybody loves having their ears tuned into WIIFM. What's in it for me? What are the benefits for me doing this course? Why should I care or keep listening? And so once you've anchored them to the why, and we try and do that as early as possible in the process, in the engagement process, is here's the how. Here's how it works. Here's how you can maximize your outcomes. And here's why this digital course is better than anything you've done before in digital learning. And then we anchor them finally to the outcome, the clear and beneficial end result you can expect, and we will be proud of. And Phil mentioned, you know, most learners care about that certificate. And for us, you know, we've got a resilience accreditation that learners can attach to their career resume. So that's the kind of ultimate outcome that we can present. And so, yeah, I agree with Phil. It's you've got to align the ROI to the strategy of the business, to the measures of the business that they care about, but ultimately engage learners in what they care about, what's in it for them.
So that actually plays really well to a question that we've gotten on the chat. So I'm just going to read it out for both of you. So the question is, I'm really interested. How do you decide what the best modes of learning are when you work with a client? For example, you know, 1 day, 2 day intensives, hybrid of quals, short courses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I mean, really interesting. And sometimes the clients have a view that's where COVID actually was quite an interesting break from tradition for some. We had some who swore by it needs to be face to face, and you know, we can counsel our clients and customers to, you know, there are other ways and show and talk them through. But sometimes we've had one or two who, no, look, that's the way we're going to do it. Okay. And then last year, I suppose, particularly in Victoria, where the duration was such that you started to create habits. You know, people could do it differently and had to do it differently for a while. You were then able to produce outcomes, similar things to what Matt was saying, that actually showed that the outcomes were sometimes better, were not demonstrably any worse, and were good for where they were going. So it actually caused a mindset change, and for a number of them, for a number of hours last year. So as much as as we as educationists sometimes say, look, this is this is the recommendation, we still hold back and say, if it is that's the way it's going to be, then that the business wants, then that's that's sort of the mode we deliver predominantly. But it has changed, I must admit. So there's the whole range from a fully digital blended sort of deliveries back to face-to-face. Again, that goes back to that individual discussion. And leaders in business are pretty strong. They're there for that reason. They make some of the decisions, and some of them get quite involved in that. So we're, path.
Yeah, I completely agree, Phil. And I think it comes back to, like I said before, the assess step up front. If you ask the right questions of clients, you can get the insights answer. And it's a great question, by the way, that came through. The questions you need to ask: why are we doing this training? What are we trying to achieve? Why are we doing this training? What are we trying to achieve? If you keep coming back to that, to the fundamental shift in behaviour, mindsets that you're trying to create, then the answer will flow on from that. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to delivering workforce training, especially not workforce resilience training at scale to organisations. So knowing where additional efforts might be required to do things like bring learners on the journey before you actually get them in an experience is really critical. We had a client recently who signed up for our resilience course. They've signed up, but we have the courses themselves planned for 3 months' time. We're currently doing a number of actions to get the conversation about resilience started with key stakeholders, just to bring them on the journey before actually deciding the best approach and leveraging those conversations with leaders around getting the conversation started around resilience, so that we can decide what's the best learning journey for putting their people through a course on this thing, resilience, that they don't yet understand. So, and once you've got the plan in place, you can then get clear on the best way to educate. And as I said earlier, digital education delivers incredible results when done well. So really, we need to be focusing on educating people in a suitable time and a suitable space for their workforce operating with. And every business is different. So asking the right questions around what are we trying to achieve, why are we trying to achieve it, as I said, should help figure out the suitable time and space. And what I mean by that is, do we deliver learning over weeks or days? Do we deliver learning in a space that's in a room or as close to in a room as we can get? Or is a digital bite-sized learning approach going to be the best outcome? So I hope that answers the question, because it was a great question.
All right, well, there's another one, actually. So I'm going to read that out too. The next question from the chat is, how do you build collaboration within a cohort in an online environment?
That's another good question. So Phil, if I may, if we think about the course activities that are available in a digital learning environment, we have course activities in digital training now that would previously have only been possible in a face-to-face training environment, right? So to give you some examples from our work, we've got activities where people post digital Post-it notes onto a digital whiteboard for brainstorming activities. People can then comment and like each other's Post-it notes, which, anyone that's worked with real Post-it notes, trying to put a comment in the bottom one, so there's not much room, but you can do that with digital. We've got asynchronous group discussions that enable people to participate in group discussions whenever and wherever is suitable to their workload and their time zone. People can be in different time zones and still engaging in conversations when they're logging in. And we have things like live webinars for live group discussions and knowledge share, which are actually built into the course platform that we use, not a separate Zoom or Microsoft Teams platform, but it's actually built in there. So there's some really great things in digital learning now that were previously, as I said, only thought possible face-to-face.
So to that, Phil, before you answer, there was also a specific question directed at you because of your experience with ACE.
Yep.
How would you recreate hands-on skills online, in your opinion? You know, and collaboration is included in that, obviously.
Yeah, look, that's a great question, because that's been the struggle for us, how to do that in many ways. Just back quickly to Matt. I mean, the other thing that you've got within the teams within a lot of software now is those breakout groups. So you can have your group of 20 and you can form those sub breakouts. Look, in terms of the practical, it's been a difficult one for us because simulation in many of those areas is not cheap. It's not easy to do. I suppose what we've done in many of our instances, and because we see the essential difference of vet training is about the doing, is about the hands-on, the practical. That's what makes us different to a lot of other sectors, is how do we best prepare our people in many of our environments for sessions when they come and do a really in-depth week or a weekend or something or other, where they get really hands-on within that. So not something that we're over the top at the moment with, but I'm sure there are a number of options out there, and people can come forward with those. But it's been hard work for us we can work through a number of simulations. We can have the webinar, you can have the demonstrations and students demonstrating particular activities online to us, and sort of, but we're still in a pretty much a touch and feel mode. So probably haven't satisfactorily answered that in the context, because it is still a struggle for us.
The million-dollar question with digital, isn't it?
It is.
As the ancient Stoics used to say, it's not about learning a lesson, it's about practicing a lesson. And the way we try to develop practical learning, even in our resilience, because it's called a resilience bootcamp, right? We're even piloting things around virtual and virtual reality to simulate environments in digital. But the four-step approach we use, and I'm kind of giving away proprietary information here, is educate, demonstrate, do, reflect. So educate is about explaining or educating someone on a concept, a skill, or a tool, which must be in a way that is relevant to their real world. And it provides examples or stories or here's the how-to that they can relate to. So the educate piece is first, but then demonstrate. You've got to demonstrate how to apply the concept, the skill, or the tool so that they feel ready to apply it for themselves. And then the do bit is you provide them with clear instructions and steps on how they go away and apply the concept, the skill or tool for themselves in their real world setting. But there's a step that people often miss. So educate, demonstrate, do. The final step in learning is reflection. So bringing learners back together with a framework for reflection. And part of the reflection process is to consider if they share their reflection back with others. If they do that, is it privately just with the educators and the facilitators, or is it as a group if it's social learning is suitable? So it's still in the nut to be cracked, but hopefully educate, demonstrate, do, reflect, and thinking about bringing the practical application is going to be really helpful.
Sounds like you both can get together after this and brainstorm and innovate on this one.
Yeah, it's interesting because I reflect on the IACE we've created in India, and on a number of trips to India, in the automotive industry, go to local dealerships, and the turnover is 40% within the first 3 months, and they employ a lot of a lot of engineers in the environment. And the reality is, the practical experience isn't so much part of that vocational experience. So what the program that we're doing there is, yes, we'll do a lot of the theoretical, but they'll be withdrawn to this centre in Gujarat to undertake that practical. But look, it is digital in the sense that it's using digital tools that you do within those sort of environments when you're analysing a car and so on and so forth. And that's going to be the key difference for these young people compared to the current. So it's not an easy one that we've sort of worked through, particularly in the I suppose, those physical, the mechanicals, the carpentry, the bricklaying, the so on and so forth. You know, in some areas where people have done, you know, you can do things like meeting, you know, a number of the soft skills, which is probably, you know, which is the way of the future in reality. You're going to have to run meetings on Teams. You're going to have to do the communications and negotiations through that. So it will, I think, allow itself to work better in some areas than others, I suspect, to complete a number of those practical skills.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got a couple of minutes left, and I'm going to put you both in the spot and ask you for a closing statement, a really, really short closing sentence.
Oh, short closing sentence.
Well, you know, a lingering thought that we can leave everybody with to end the session. How's that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I guess I'll come back to the, you know, people are used to engaging socially. You know, most people spend more time socializing on their phones in social media platforms these days than in real forms. So looking at what works in those sorts of environments, how do we engage people socially in digital environments is really going to crack the nut for whether it's practical or theory-based skills training. The social learning, we forget that as children we learned the majority of our life lessons through watching and observing socially. So how can we build social into digital? I feel like that's the crack, the nut to keep cracking.
Yeah, look, for me, I think it's what happened last year. Let's not forget what it's enabled us to do. Things like this today, things like a lot of increased digital learning. Let's not go back into our shells and progress on the journey that we're on in 19. What we did in 20, and you know, and I'm sure, Matt, there'll be things in resilience, there's things but in digital education, what we did last year from preps to the end of all types of study was really significant and should not be forgotten. How can we, particularly in the digital space, use what we've done to do the next acceleration in this next year or so, rather than let's take 5 years to do it, which may well have happened if we hadn't had last year. So last year wasn't all bad.
Right. Well,
I had another child last year, so I can put my thumbs up to that.
All right. Well, that's
a digital native.
Yeah.
That's the perfect ending sentiment, I think. So thank you so very much, Matt and Phil.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, and apologies from my end, and thanks to your team for getting me back engaged as quickly as possible. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Zanthi.
much, Zanthi, Phil, and Matt.